All right, let's talk about markets. Any market, really, from the place you get your morning coffee to the New York Stock Exchange. How do we know if they're actually working well? Is there like a report card for a market? That's exactly what we're going to figure out today.
So let's get right into it. What we need is a kind of scorecard, right? A way to measure the total benefit a market is creating for everybody, the buyers and the sellers. In economics, this whole area of study is called welfare economics, which is really just a fancy way of asking, is the market making everyone as well off as possible? To build our scorecard, we've got to start with one side of the deal, the buyer. Let's dig into the benefit, that pure win that you and I get as consumers every time we participate in a market. Okay, first things first, we need to get our heads around this super important idea, willingness to pay. And it's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It is the absolute top dollar, maximum price you would be willing to shell out for something. It's not what you hope to pay, it's your personal limit. And this number is totally unique to you. It's how you value that thing.
Let's make this super clear with an example. Imagine 4 roommates are looking to buy a used iPod. As you can see, they all have a different idea of what it's worth to them. Fatima would go as high as $400, but Jameer's ceiling is just $225. Now, this difference is what makes a market tick. If the price was, say, $300, who's going to buy it? You got it. Fatima and Alexis are in. Cameron and Jameer, they're out.
And here's where the magic happens. Anytime you buy something for less than your maximum willingness to pay, you walk away with a benefit. We call that consumer surplus. You know that feeling, right? That little internal high five when you get an awesome deal? That's consumer surplus. And the math is simple. It's just your willingness to pay minus the price you actually paid. Let's check back in with Fatima. Her willingness to pay is $400. Let's say the iPad is selling for $360. Of course she buys it. So what's her consumer surplus? Easy. It's her $400 limit minus the $360 price tag. That leaves her with $40 of pure surplus. That is a $40 win for Fatima just for being in the market. Okay, but what happens if the price drops? This is where it gets really cool. Let's say the iPad suddenly goes on sale for $320. 2 awesome things happen. First, Fatima, who was already going to buy it, is now way happier. Her surplus just doubled from $40 to $80. And second, we have a new buyer. Alexis, whose limit was $350, now jumps into the market and gets a $30 surplus of her own. So the key takeaway here is huge. A lower price always increases the total consumer surplus. All right, so we've covered the buyer's side of the win. But it takes 2 to tango in a market, so let's flip the coin and look at this whole thing from the seller's perspective. Because you guessed it, they have their own version of a surplus, and it's every bit as important. For sellers, the key idea isn't what they're willing to pay, it's their cost. And when economists talk about cost, we mean everything. The raw materials, the time spent, and yeah, even the opportunity cost of what else they could be doing. This cost is their rock bottom price, the absolute minimum they'll accept. You could call it their willingness to sell.
Let's try another quick example. Imagine we have 3 people who mow lawns in a neighborhood. Jin is super efficient. His cost to do a lawn is only $100. Jada's is $200, and Chris's is a bit higher at $350. It's simple. They're only going to take a job if the price they're paid is more than their cost.
And just like consumers, sellers get a surplus. Producer surplus is simply the price they get paid minus their cost. You can think of it as their profit or the benefit they get from showing up to do the work. It's their win from the deal.
So let's say the going rate to get your lawn mowed is $250. Who's working today? Well, Jin's cost is only $100, so he gets a fantastic surplus of $150. Jada's cost is $200, so she's in too, and she'll make a nice $50 surplus. What about Chris? His cost is $350, so for him, it's just not worth it. So the total producer surplus in this market is Jin's $150 plus Jada's $50, which adds up to a grand total of $200.
Okay, deep breath. We've got the buyer's score and the seller's score. Now it's time to add them up and get the final grade for the market itself. This is where we get to the really big idea of market efficiency.
And here it is, our ultimate scorecard, the measure of a market's total performance. Total surplus is just consumer surplus plus producer surplus. That's it. This number represents the total value created by a market, all the gains from trade shared between everyone involved. So when we ask if a market is working well, what we're really asking is, how big is the total surplus?
A good way to think about it is like an economic pie. The entire pie is the total value created by the market. One slice goes to consumers as their surplus, and the other slice goes to producers. The goal of a really great, well-functioning market is to make this whole pie as big as it can possibly be. So how do we make that pie as big as possible? I mean, who's in charge of this? And the answer is kind of amazing. Nobody. Under the right conditions, the market just does it by itself. It naturally finds the point that maximizes that total surplus. And we call that sweet spot equilibrium. You see, a market in equilibrium does three things perfectly. First, it makes sure the goods go to the buyers who value them the most, the ones with the highest willingness to pay. Second, it makes sure those goods are produced by the sellers with the lowest costs. And third, and this is the big one, it produces the exact quantity that makes that total surplus pie as big as it can be. It's just incredibly efficient. And if you're wondering why that equilibrium quantity is so special, just think about what happens if we miss the mark. If we produce too little, like on the left, we're missing out. There are people who want to buy, whose value is higher than the seller's cost, but no deal is made. That's a lost opportunity. And if we produce too much, on the right, we're making things for people whose value is actually lower than the cost to produce it. That's just plain wasteful. Only at equilibrium do we get it just right. This whole idea is what the famous economist Adam Smith was talking about with his invisible hand. Everyone in the market is just looking out for number one, right? Buyers want a low price, sellers want a high one. But in a competitive market, all those self-interested actions actually guide the market to the best outcome for society as a whole. It's as if an invisible hand is steering the ship.
Now, this whole invisible hand thing is a beautiful, powerful idea. But, and this is a big but, it's not foolproof. The magic only really works if the market follows certain rules. When those rules get broken, the market can, well, it can fail.
For instance, what if one company has a total monopoly? That's what we call market power. They can just jack up prices, and that shrinks the total surplus pie. Or think about pollution from a factory. That's an externality. It's a cost that affects people who aren't even buying or selling the factory's product. In cases like these, the market outcome isn't efficient anymore, and that invisible hand starts to lose its grip. And this all brings us to one last, pretty intense thought. We can use these ideas of surplus and efficiency to analyze almost any market. So, what about a market for human kidneys? From a purely economic, efficiency-first point of view, a free market might actually work. It would get kidneys to the people willing to pay the most. But is efficiency the only thing we should care about? This is where Economics runs headfirst into ethics, and it forces us to ask some really tough questions about where the limits of a market should be. I'll leave you to think on that one.